Wow, wow, wow. Who knew Nikki hiring a perfect, though vaguely creepy, new assistant would turn into such a ride? When Claire lured Newman to the lake house in Oregon, we were blown out of the water when soap vet Colleen Zink turned up as the oft-mentioned Great Aunt Jordan in an episode cliffhanger. Things only got better from there, as the source of Psycho Jordan's vendetta against the Newmans became clear. She wanted revenge on Nikki and Victor for their perceived treatment of her late sister Eve Howard. We began putting the pieces together and excitedly realized that Claire might be the daughter of Victoria Newman and Cole Howard. After the diabolical duo poisoned the Newmans and Cole whilst Nikki lay hooked up to a vodka IV upstairs, the sordid story came out of Jordan stealing baby Eve from the hospital and switching her with a baby who died. Jordan raised Claire to believe that her parents left her behind because she was an embarrassment to the family, fueling Claire's desire for vengeance in the process. Not only was Jordan one of the best new soap villains in a long time, but after the initial shocking plot involving the lake house, the tale continued to drive story as Nikki struggled with alcoholism anew and Victoria Cole and Claire worked to get their minds around the outcome of the DNA test that proved they are Claire's parents, which creates conflict for the Newmans given that Victoria's daughter tried to kill them all. Best of all, Jordan, who hid an event to escape the authorities, holed up at the GCAC in disguise to continue her reign of terror when Sharon began receiving strange packages this summer. It was not only the first sign of some truly soapy drama, but it was also the first hint of anything resembling a story for the popular character who had been relegated to endlessly doling out coffee and advice, even after the sudden death of her husband. Cameron was, at long last, a properly sinister villain who actually did more than talk a scary game. He killed a cat, ripped Borgnine, scrapped with Nick, kidnapped Faith, and strapped a bomb to her, and held a knife to Sharon's throat before she shanked him herself. Even after his death, Cameron drove storied by leaving Sharon his company. Disappointingly, that didn't amount to much, save a brief albeit interesting interlude, where Sharon worked with both of her exes, Nick and Adam. Nonetheless, the return of Cameron was a big winner that brought some very welcome and much-needed drama. The entire 50th anniversary year has been one of fun returns and past characters popping up. From the aforementioned Cole and Cameron, to Malcolm Winters, Yolanda Hamilton, Mamie Johnson, Nina Webster, Danny Romalotti, the list goes on. Best of all, they not only showed up at Nikki's bicentennial gala, but in the case of Mamie and Danny, returned to stories of their own later on. We've got Mamie versus Jill round 2, and Danny and Cricket falling for each other all over again. What's not to love? The return of Tucker McCall started out with so much promise that it was extra painful to watch it all amount to essentially nothing. Tucker versus the Abbotts became headache-inducing, even as we rooted for McCall and Ashley's love story to flourish against all odds. But after the dude lost it on her during their honeymoon, we were left with a bad taste in our mouth and a sulky pseudo-villain who, in a year, hadn't managed to do anything but lob one-liners and threats that left us rolling our eyes. He took over 0 companies whilst his own went bankrupt, and the relationships that gave the character layers fell by the wayside as he split with Ashley and Devin dumped his dad as well. Likewise, his sidekick Audra, a promising pot-stirring vixen, has begun to suffer from her ongoing involvement with the guy who is all bluster with no real bite. The story benefited from a last-minute acceleration before Christmas, which gave it some much-needed energy. But it may be too little too late after eating an entire year of airtime and pulling down the Abbott family with it. From the minute Diane resurfaced, the writing for Jack and Phyllis become contrived as it endeavored to justify their breakup and him forgiving Diane. It went from contrived to whacked out when Phyllis decided to do the exact same thing she'd been criticizing her rival for all along, fake her death and let her children think she was murdered. It made not a lick of sense and did more damage to the character of Phyllis than was worth it to level the playing field between the women.